Hi, this is Ana Flor Adrias, and I am here to report about grievance machinery. Hello, everyone. Before I'm going to talk about the details of having a grievance machinery, I would just like to give first an example or a scenario in an organization. Let's take, for example, there is this a particular branch, and it has been a practice of the branch during their peak season or peak days to let their employees have a late lunch. This is perhaps with the goal of optimizing productivity within that particular branch, as it is their peak seasons, and according to the wisdom of the manager, it won't hurt the employees because it only happens just at least 3 to 4 times, 3 to 4 days within a month. And this has been the usual practice of the branch. And there is this one employee named, let's just call him John, for example. So John, being one of the employees, he has been complaining about this practice to his co-employees because he has health concerns. He has ulcer. So as we know, when someone has ulcer, it's really not healthy for that person to have to delay his or her meals. So he has been complaining about it. Now, so with that particular scenario in mind, the question is, can John complain about this formally in the organization, taking into consideration that the peak seasons is not really daily, and their manager is having that particular practice, is also just concerned about the productivity of the company? Okay, with that particular branch scenario, let's just leave that particular question and let's just try to answer that later. After we were able to discuss about grievance machinery, because it has a lot to do about it. Okay, so what is grievance machinery in the first place? So actually, grievance machinery is actually found in Article 260 of the Labor Code of the Philippines under Book 5, and it's under actually labor relations. So just a very brief um, background about the article. It says that the parties to a collective bargaining agreement shall include therein provisions that will ensure the mutual observance of its terms and conditions. And another, they shall establish a machinery for the adjustment and resolution of grievances arising from the interpretation or implementation of the collective bargaining agreement, and those arising from the interpretation or enforcement of company personnel policies. So actually, if we are just going to look at the formal definition of the law about grievance machinery, it actually highlights about the collective bargaining agreement. And I'm sure with the previous reporters, they have already elaborated what does CBA means, especially in the private industry. So CBA stands for Collective Bargaining Agreement. And actually, grievance machinery is mandated by law to be included in the collective bargaining agreement. Okay, this is actually made to ensure that the employees or the labor organizations has the opportunity to express whatever it is that they are trying to say with regards as to the work conditions, for example, in an organization. Now, talking about grievances, so we need to, I think, put into context what does it really mean when we say grievance of an employee. So when we say grievance of an employee, it's basically a sign that the employee has dissatisfaction, or he or she is in a way discontented to his job or to the organization in particular. So this could mean a lot of things. Yes, when we say work-related concerns, work-related complaints, concerns, and issues, it could mean a lot of things. Now, there are a lot of causes of grievances. First, we have these economic issues. So it could mean that the employee is has concerns about the compensation. Perhaps he or she does not feel that the company is providing enough for them. And another cause of grievance could be psychological issues. It might be that some point while working in the organization, the employee is not happy with how things are going at work. And another cause of grievance, which is very common, it's this unhealthy working conditions and environment. Now, this means it could be a the physical working conditions of the environment, not providing enough health and safety measures, especially in times of this pandemic nowadays. So there can be a lot of employees who are very much concerned about their health and safety, especially if they are told to go to work even with ECQ and GCQ. Now, unhealthy working conditions also, it could mean it could mean that the relationship between the employee and to the manager, or to his or her colleagues, perhaps is strained because of some particular issues. That could be a cause of grievance. And then another is structural issues. So when we say structural issues, it could mean that the employee have might has concern about transfers issues, promotion issues, or demotion issues or concerns, things like that. Okay, so again, um, the in implementing grievance machinery in an organization, it's really important that um, the organization or the people around or inside or is tasked to handle grievances should be able to analyze what is really the cause or the root cause of such grievances, because employees might be concerned of telling the truth because they might be scared, or they are fearful that they might lose a job if ever they would complain to their manager or complain to the organization in itself. That in the law actually is that organizations are mandated to have their own grievance machinery committee. So a lot of organizations, they have already this existing grievance committee. The concept of having a grievance committee within an organization is that very simple. The objective of having a grievance committee is just for be able for an organization to have an avenue for every employee's concerns, especially these concerns. These grievances are um, sort of work-related issues and causes of dissatisfaction towards the organization. Now, in presenting a complaint or a grievance, the employee, this is very important, the employee is assured freedom from coercion, discrimination, and of a speedy and impartial settlement of such complaint or grievance. That is a very important element of a grievance machinery. Or if someone is would become a member of a grievance committee, so he or she would bear that in mind. Okay. And talking about grievance committee, so grievance committee has these important elements. So grievance committee is a committee within the agency created primarily for the early appreciation of grievances, grievances filed by a dissatisfied employee. So it's an orderly process established in CBA. So as I have mentioned a while ago, having grievance machinery in an organization should be embedded in the collective bargaining agreements for a unionized organization, or for whenever a particular company has a labor union, so it should be embedded in the collective bargaining agreement. And yes, it is designed to give employees every opportunity to be heard. We already mentioned that. And it aims to eliminate or reduce dissatisfaction, of course, because if an employee is given the avenue to express whatever he or she is feeling, especially negatively feeling about the organization, whatever concerns, if the employee is assured that whenever he or she has concerns, there is an avenue for him or her to express his complaints without any fears of losing the job. And the grievance machinery is expected to conform with the following principles. Okay, so an employee or a union may, without resorting to formal grievance procedure, discuss informally any problem relating to his conditions of employment or with the supervisor, for example. And complaints, or another important element, or idea about having a grievance committee is just complaints and grievances must be resolved at the lowest possible level in the agency. So as much as possible, whenever there are concerns an employee has, so as much as possible, this will be settled amicably uh, within the organization. So that's why later on, as we discuss the minute details about having a grievance machinery, we would know where should it start, no? What, or to whom should an employee would complain or express his concerns first. And again, grievances are not bound by formal or legal rules and technicalities. So these are important elements in forming a grievance committee. Just to give you a general overview of the objectives of a grievance machinery, or the formation of a grievance machinery within an organization, is first, its first objective is to determine or provide the best way to remedy the specific cause or causes of grievance. Yes. And another objective is to promote wholesome and desirable employee relations in the organization. And of course, well, this should prevent employee dissatisfaction. And third is to create a working environment that is conducive to good supervisor-employee relations, and that will also improve employee morale. So those are basically the objectives of having a grievance machinery committee in an organization. And um, let's talk about a very important element also about grievances. Okay, so we have to distinguish or differentiate what are grievable issues and what are not grievable issues. Especially, we have to differentiate, yes, the grievances that has to be administered using a grievance machinery, and we have to differentiate it from an administrative issue. So when we say grievable issue, it involves mere dissatisfaction of the employee. Take note of the word dissatisfaction of the employee. So that's under grievable issues. Okay, while an administrative issue, it involves already malice, and bad faith. So if ever there are concerns about those general terms, malice and bad faith, it should not be handled by the grievance machinery committee. So where would you, or what examples can we give to an administrative issue? Those examples such as sexual harassment, those are very serious cases. It's really a violation of the law. So child abuse perhaps, and other dishonesty perhaps. So this can be addressed at a different avenue. So it's an administrative case. While in a grievance machinery proceedings, it shall only talk about issues pertaining employee dissatisfaction. So I think that's an important point that we have to differentiate as of this time. Okay, so let's talk about the formation of a grievance committee. Now, it should be noted that as per provided by the law in Article 260, the grievance committee should take place within 7 days after the complaint or after a particular concern has been raised by an employee to the committee. So any issues pertaining to that should be settled within 7 days. That's provided by the law. And if ever there are instances that this is not settled within 7 days, as per administration or as per facilitation of the grievance committee of an organization, this is then forwarded after 7 days. This is then forwarded to voluntary arbitration. Now, I will not talk about more about voluntary arbitration because I believe that's part of the report of the next reporter. Okay. Now, in the formation of the grievance committee, the members could be either the committee could consist of the representative from a particular department and two representatives, and then the head of the department perhaps, and then the supervisor, and then some employees. So that could form part a grievance machinery. So what happens is that when an employee has concerns, the the organization or the company should explicitly inform the employees that these sets of people uh, is in charge of receiving issues and concerns that would be processed with the grievance committee. So that's actually the idea to it. Now, every organization, every company has different implementing guidelines as to the formation of its own grievance committee. The members would consist perhaps of different sets of people because it would really depend on the structure also of the organization. So, but the thing is, the committee should consist of those employees in a lower level of the structure, because the idea of a grievance committee is that any issues should be settled at the lowest possible level in the organization. So therefore it's also understandable that the members of the grievance committee should be at the lower level in the structure in terms of the org structure is concerned. Cut. Still talking about the formation of the grievance committee. So again, there are organizations or there are companies that has labor unions. So meaning their employees are organized. And having a labor union is actually one of the rights of the employees. They have the right to organize themselves. So in an organization with labor unions, with a labor union, so this is how the process goes. So um, there is this one aggrieved employee. So now let's go back to the case of the case of John. So can you still remember at the beginning of this video? So let's take for example John being the aggrieved employee. So what can he do is to express his concerns to his immediate head. So that could be the supervisor or manager depending on their structure. And then if ever his or John's concern is not settled within that level, then they can probably discuss it with the immediate head also of the manager of John. So let's say it's the departmental head, the business manager, the um, depending on their structure. And if ever these are not settled, then still the same, this can be forwarded with a grievance committee. Now take note that we are talking about a unionized organization. So a grievance committee is composed of two representatives from the management, one union representative, and uh, one union department representatives of the department. Okay, and if ever within 7 days, if these are not settled within the level of the grievance committee, then that's where an arbitrator would come in. Okay, voluntary arbitration. Now, in organizations having no, because there are a lot of organizations that have no organized labor unions. Okay, like for example in my previous work, we don't have they don't have labor union, but we don't have labor union, but the company in itself has already organized a grievance committee. So it is explicitly stated uh, by means of having a company policy. So we have way back then, we had a policy as to the composition of a grievance committee, and we have these certain procedures that we are following. Now, actually, the organization, well, actually, the policy was really crafted by the HR department because private organizations are required to have a policy on grievance machinery. So that's how it goes. So what we did is that after the formulation of the policy way back when I was still employed with my previous work, um, uh, we had already pre-selected the composition of the committee, the grievance committee, and we have already stipulated also the process. So whenever there are complaints, where should the employee raise his concerns, what are the grievable issues and things like that. It's explicitly stated through a company policy on grievance machinery committee. Now, okay, so let's assume that an organization has already created their own grievance committee. Okay, so if you are a member, if you would become a member of a committee, there are actually 5 points that you need to prepare you need to prepare whenever there are grievances. So first, you need to have a test for grievance. So what does this mean? So you would have to really understand what the concerns of the particular employee, and you have to identify if it's a grievable issue. Now we have discussed about that. So if it's a grievable issue, then um, that's the time that you need to investigate. So take note, for example, that whenever there are complaints, you don't immediately uh, discuss the matter. There has to be certain steps that you need to do, or some preparations that you need to do, so that the handling of the grievances would become effective. So after testing for any grievance issues, the second is to investigate. So the committee will have to have an investigation process. Now, this is not the investigation process that is referred to sa law, but at least you should ask further the employee concerned, and if ever this includes other employees in the organization, which is usually the case, so you need to also listen to what they have to say. And because remember, the purpose of investigating is for you to be able to identify the root cause of the grievance so that you can address it properly. Okay, so you need to investigate. Now, investigation is easier said than done, because along the way you could probably meet a lot of emotions to that. Okay, so you have to be skillful, you have to have trainings. I think the organization, a company, if it has a grievance committee, it's really important that this people consisting of the grievance committee should be able to undergo trainings so that they would be able to address grievances properly. Because if there are um should we say, not errors, but if there's mishandling in the grievances, the objectives of having this grievance committee might be compromised. So that. So after investigating, there should be documentation. So you have to write the grievance. There should be documentation in the grievance handling process. So what are the things that you need to write? So who was involved? Why is it a grievance? When did this happen? Where did this happen? So what settlement was wanted by the aggrieved employee? So things like that. So it would also help if the organization would have template to that. So yes, I think the grievance committee should develop a template for the organizations that they can use whenever um, they will have to process uh, grievance settlements. Okay, so let's just try to have a recap. Test for any. The first process would be you have to test for grievance. Second is you have to investigate. Third is that you have to write the grievance. And next process is you have to present the grievance. So if you have done, if the committee was able to prepare all the things needed, so this is the time wherein probably you will call a discussion. So let's not call it um, a case settlement, because it's not a case, it's a grievance settlement, but you can probably invite people to present the grievance and discuss what are the things that needs to be talked about. And that, so those are the 5 steps in 5 points to prepare for grievances. First, the test for grievance, then you have to investigate, then you have to write the grievance and present the grievance. So it's actually a simple process, but I think it's easier said than done. So when we are handling grievances, especially because it involves people, it involves emotions of different people in the organization. So this should be handled properly. Okay. Now let's go back to John. Okay, so what was then our question? If you can recall, our question was, can John um, can file a complaint about his issues on extended lunch breaks? Not extended, but late lunch. Okay, I mean late lunch. So of course, basically, um, John can complain to the organization. So if again the organization, and then another question is that important question is that, is it a grievable issue? What do you think? Is it a grievable issue? Well, for me, it is a grievable issue because it pertains to dissatisfaction of John in terms of how they were able to uh, manage by their supervisor in their branch. So it's a form of dissatisfaction because it concerns his health. Okay, so it's a grievable issue. So definitely, if an organization has a grievance machinery, so the concerns of John and other similar concerns of employees should be able to be addressed properly. And having grievance machinery in an organization is an advantage, both from the employee perspective, from the labor union, and from the management, and as well as from the government. Because first, for the labor union or part of the employees, of course, they would have their avenue to express any concerns about work-related matters. On part of management, on part of the company, so if employees are able to express their issues and concerns, then there is a greater tendency that these issues will be solved. And if issues are solved within the organization, then it could lead to it could lead to a more harmonious relationship within the organization. And if there is harmonious relationship, researchers has proven then and again that harmonious relationship affects productivity in a good way. And in part of the government, handling cases handling cases is expensive, it's labor intensive, time consuming, resources will be used. So if the government can prevent cases, no, labor related cases, because these cases or issues are already being settled at the lowest level in the organization. So this would help the government in avoiding those resources that can be expended, that can be given to other more um, productive things. So that's it. I hope that I was able to impart something about grievance machinery, and I hope that from now on we are all now aware that every organization will really benefit if it has a grievance machinery committee that would really address the complaints of every employee. So it's not just beneficial on the employee's perspective, it's not just beneficial to the labor organization, but it is also beneficial to the management, and it's also beneficial to the government. So it's actually a holistic way of solving issues within the organization. So I think that's all for now. This has been Ana Flor Adrias, reporting to you about grievance machinery. I hope you all have a good day. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Bye.